Dear honorable hosts, dear honorable guests, dear colleagues, dear students, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be today here at Daffodil International University and to have the possibility to discuss a very acute and a very important issue on fake news. Myself, I have the background in law, so I'm not a journalist. I don't have the background in the journalism, but in a way, well, these fields, law goes always after every phenomenon, every single event of life, and today we're talking about legal measures as well when we talk about fake news. But I would just like to ask you to kind of start the whole discussion from the very basics. And the basic question for me is like, why do we talk about this now? Propaganda, as we know it, or information operations, as the term which has been known for already 100 years or more, this is nothing new. In daily life, we have fake news, which is called like rumors. We talk about each other, we talk about the colleagues, usually the information which is transmitted to other room may not be correct, so we may make the mistakes, but somehow, for some reason, today the term fake news appears as usually appears as one of the key words in the headlines of the newspapers and of the media. Why do we talk about it now? 10 years ago, since at the university, at our security research lab, we have been running a couple of projects with the armed forces. And I remember this moment very well because we were kind of persuading that it's an upcoming issue, and it was like 7 years ago. And the government could not really truly believe that this is the issue that they should take here. But then we had the US elections. And then fake news became the word of the year. So why do we talk about this now? Why now somehow it appears the issue to be discussed? And I think that pictures and data and numbers, they exemplify this issue very well. So technologies and accessibility. I would like to invite you to have a look at the analysis done by Security in Canada, Security Research Agency. So this is the Canadian reality. So 86% of people has internet at home. 74% of people spend 3 to 4 hours online each day. And 38% of people use social media as a source of news. Not to say that we will see the increasing number, quite a huge number of people that have the accounts on social media. So social media becomes like a platform for getting the news from, about the world. So this is why it's not surprising that propaganda, or however we call it, I call it information disorder from the legal perspective. It goes after the use, after our habits, it goes after the easiest way to reach the society and have the impact. Now, we say fake news. What does it mean? There can be different ways of information disorder. As it was rightly, the comment was made just on the way here, news cannot be fake. And this is true. So news or information is described, at least in legal documents, as something which is verifiable and true. So news cannot be fake. So it should be true and verifiable. So this is why we usually use different words. But in principle, this would be different forms of information disorder. So, we have a lot of research on that, what kind of forms the information disorder may take, and they can vary from one classification to the other. So we have satire parody, which is not information disorder itself, but it may cause the disinformation or misunderstanding on the way. There can be misleading content, there can be imposter content or fabricated content, and later on I will give examples of that. So it can be false connection, so where you have a correct information, but you just make a false connection with the correct information. You may have false context and manipulated context, where generally the information is correct. So, and the researchers, what they do is that they also try to identify the reasons why there is the information disorder, and the reasons may vary, so they may be different. So, poor journalism. I do not know what in fact it means, so I do not know if this term is correct from the point of view of journalism. So various types of information disorder may be for that. So to parody, to provoke, some may do that for passion, whatever it is. So some information disorder appears to be for partisanship, so profit. So this is something what we see in Facebook quite often, no? Buy this thing, and so this is the best way to lose weight, for instance. Or some of the known people, like even the Duchess of Cambridge was involved in a way the information disorder, saying that she was involved in the business, and those who were selling the bills, so they were saying that she was, even leaving the family for that. I mean, leaving the family duties for that, and propaganda. So I'm not going to define the terms now. How do we differentiate political influence and propaganda? Because propaganda is the term which is known for ages already. So propaganda is a Latin term, and it comes from the word propagare. So that means the promoting of the ideas, that you have. And in the beginning, it didn't have any political nature as such, but during the 20th century, it became to have this political aspect. So propagating of your political ideas. Now, coming to the reality, coming to what we are talking, to what we are exposed today. So you see the different pictures. I believe that some of them may be unknown to you, and that's good, because that means that fake news did not reach you. But this is the reality of, as you call, West. So we call it West as well, because for us it's even closer West. But here are the examples of the news that are considered to be fake or disinformation disorder. So, and basically what we see, a lot of fake news going around political debates, and I think that, and elections. And I think that this is a reality for all the countries in one way or another. So some of the examples. So Pope Francis shocks world, endorses Donald Trump for president before the election. So this information was denied, so as not bearing the reality. So why did Hillary Clinton bought some illegal arms for more than €127 million? So this was also the information that appeared to be fake. So then we had another President Macron, so the French president. So there were numerous news about him which did not really have the place in the reality. So, for instance, Macron was an agent of US, which was apparently not true. So then we had the news that Macron did not support Ukraine in general. So we have this issue in Europe. We have the military conflict in eastern Ukraine, and it raises a lot of debates and a lot of questions. As everybody knows now worldwide that Russia is involved in the contract by supporting the separatists. So this is not fake news. This is what numerous reports of intelligences say, and this is what the European Union is aware of. And but in one way or another, so this issue is very much manipulated and speculated. And whenever we have a new leader of one country, so they are trying to show that, I mean, there are doubts about the support of Western countries to Ukraine in the area, in the conflict. So we have another, I mean, a very civilian case. So you might have heard about repetitive riots in France when President Macron was trying to change the labor law. So, and for instance, the news had come that the police were trying to quell the riots. The police officers, they took off the helmets to show the solidarity to the rioters, which was not true, because they took off the helmets to talk to the rioters before they quelled them. So, in the end, it was denied, and so the newest one that I have taken just yesterday. So this is this month's information disorder, which actually is continuous. So we have Greta, most probably you know the lady from Sweden, who is very much advocating for climate, for the measures to take against climate change. So we can see that she's presented in mass media, in some of the mass media, as the ill girl who does not understand what she's doing because she's ill, and that's of course the agent sent by Sweden to kind of to propagate Sweden's interest and you know, various other associated things. So these are very lately and recent examples of what we face. And if we take the statistics, and it was very good research done in Canada, only 50% of Canadians, 50%, distinguish whether the news is fake or not. So that means that to make an error, even if you are very literate and you are educated, it's very easy. Now, today we talk basically about political influence. So how to make political influence in order to, how to reach the audiences in order to make them make the right choice for the for someone that you want to have elected. So why do nations or states use cyber capabilities to influence democratic processes? So, and again, the governments, as we have a lot of task forces now present in different member states, in different states in the world, we say there are different goals. But basically, we can classify these goals to immediate, affect the popularity of candidates, call into question legitimacy of election process, promote desired election outcome. However, it leads to, in any case, a long vision. So the longer vision would be to promote foreign economic ideological military interest, to reduce confidence in democracy, and create division in international alliances. So for Lithuania, for my country, there is nothing new. We have been living in this for all the time. It's just that we knew that information operations were always in place. I have just had trainings by the armed forces accidentally, not because I just, you know, was intending to be there. But they said, and they gave us the textbook of 1970-something on information operations in Russian language, because I still can read and speak Russian. So, and if you read, you see that everything is up to date and everything is valid. The main principles how you go for information disorder and information operations and all the goals that are listed here in 2019 are valid for, you know, were valid for that time and are valid for today. So somebody is working very continuously on the same issue and is working well. Now, if we add some other cyber activities, to strengthen the impact, for instance, stealing sensitive campaign documents, no? And releasing it public, and multiplicating it with the fake news. If we, for instance, steal a party's voters' information, if we release unauthorized information, so that can make even greater effect on the voters generally. And maybe, well, this is the question also to discuss, can it in the end impact the choice of the voter? So, and this question is a question that we are discussing that very widely and very vividly and widely in Europe. So the European Commission has launched the project where we are partners and we participate and support the project among other 44 partners in Europe. So it's Horizon 2020 project, and one of the programs, which is T-Sharp program, explores the ways to have the capacity for every European state to have a full spectrum information of what is happening online and on the ground. So I think that the relation between the two is very important, because sometimes you may not understand what's happening online if you do not know what are the events that are taking place on the ground. So mixing up this information, making this information kind of aligned, so this gives you a full spectrum information. So Sparta project, we are running this project for already 1 year, and in the end we were planning to have a laboratory in our university to investigate, just to do more research on that, and also to have the whole strategy for the country, how to deal with these cases. And what is important in in this process is to understand how it comes, because if you do not understand how it works, so you will not be able to tackle that. So, and we are working closely now with the armed forces in Lithuania. Armed forces has a strategic communication department. So whenever we have the information disorder, fake news, so strategic communication department works on this issue, and it is trying to deconstruct. So how does it appear? And I will give you a real examples for our country for you to understand what is our reality, which may be different from yours. So, for instance, we had recently, when I'm talking about recently, so I'm talking about the recent couple of years. So in 2016, we had the news that Russian attacked Lithuania. So, and I think that the video will not be here, so just a minute. So you see the bomb, the explosion of the bomb, which was not real, and here you see the plane, so which was not real. So the plane released the bomb, and it seems that there was an explosion, and there was nothing similar to that. So, and the fake news were released that Russia attacked Lithuania, our port at the sea. So how it was done? So Facebook account was created, and fake news, video and subtitles combination about BBC breaking news. So a report was created. So video montage by using trusting BBC News skin was done, and it was posted, and of course it was disseminated through social media. Our armed strategic communication department in armed forces has a full laboratory in order to, and a number of tools in order to analyze the content in the social media, and they can see where the media, from which account this information comes from. Another example, the chief of Lithuanian armed forces says NATO is a threat. It's not the defense. So one of the main goals that we see now in information disorder in Lithuania is to reduce the trust in NATO as an international organization. So you will see another example. So basically people, I mean those who do that, so they are trying to persuade different nations that NATO is not a guarantee. And like the countries that are asked to invest in military capability should leave NATO and should invest, of course, in other things that are pressing. For instance, education, social care. Why should we invest in military capabilities? But on the other hand, we understand very well, if we do not invest in military capabilities, we will not have a defense. So we cannot just simply wait for somebody to come in and save us. So it doesn't work. So how was it spread? So website on WordPress was created, fake news was disseminated, so the photo was real, but the headlines were faked, and it was posted on July 8, 2016, and it was disseminated through the website. Another example of fake news, and by the way, these are the reconstructions that are made by our armed forces, because just we are working together, and I asked for them to share something that they feel that are most important for Lithuania. So another example, so NATO forces are in all the countries, and we have different soldiers coming and having the different training. So it's very frequent that we have German, for instance, soldiers being in different bases, or we have US soldiers. So whenever they are there, so we have information disorder. One of the examples, so fake email was created that German soldiers raped Austrian teenager girl in one of the small cities of Lithuania. So, and it was, you see the WordPress, you see in yellow, was created to be the platform for the dissemination of the news, and the fake photos were fabricated photos were put to the WordPress, and it was disseminated through social media. So you see the headlines in social media. Of course, those who disseminate in social media, usually they do that through so-called fake accounts that are usually have their source in Russia. So another one example. Lithuanian chief of the armed forces says Lithuania should recognize Crimea, part of Ukraine, as Russia. So this is another, like an acute issue that is very present on how we united in terms how we recognize, how we treat the actions of Russia against Crimea. Do we have a united approach in Europe, or we have different approaches in Europe? So whenever we have somebody new coming in, and that was when our chief came to the post, there will be this information disorder that somebody is against something which is, a united vote. So again, very similarly, YouTube account was created, and fake news was disseminated, including the video. So basically, he was talking in Lithuania. The audience was Russian, but the translation was different from the one in Lithuanian language. So this is another example how you can use the right plot, the right information, but then you just add something like the fake information, and you have a completely different message. And this is another example. So different examples of what's happening, and you see most of the examples are related to security issues, so which are very acute in Lithuania. So you see a fake photo, you see the bike on the ground, and you see the military vehicle. So, and the news was that during the NATO exercise, and it was very recent, 2 Lithuanian vehicles got into accident, and they hit the bicycle with a boy, and the boy dead. So yes, there was an accident, but there was no boy. So, and this is again to say that, well, when NATO soldiers come, they are not careful enough, and they're not well trained. So, and they do the harm to the society. So what technologies allow to do? They allow to very well deconstruct the information which is fake and to understand how it was done. Now we talk. So these are the examples which are. I mean, we have a lot of recent examples, but these are already deconstructed examples. So, do we care about the terminology? Because we usually use the word fake news, but as it was correctly mentioned, news may not be fake, and fake news does not say a lot about different ways of information disorder. So there are numerous research on that, but basically European Union and European Council documents, and also the American research suggest to use 3 terms. So, so we have disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. So basically, why it is important to use correct terms? Because from the legalistic perspective, so, and what is the distinction between the 3? So basically, 2 main features that are different is like, what is the goal and what's the intention? Do you intend to do harm to the public? So that would be disinformation. If you do not have any intention and you do that by mistake, it will be misinformation. And if you do on purpose, but you do that for the personal needs, whatever they are, so that would be malinformation. Of course, we cannot, sometimes it's difficult to put, the information in one or other category, but this is the difficulty that law has, because otherwise this is not so important, apart from the responsibility might be for this kind of actions. And when we talk about responsibility, we usually ask the question, so what? There was a information disorder, there was disinformation or misinformation or whatever. But do we judge? I mean, it has been for ages. So the main question, can disinformation do any damage? And if so, how we measure the damage? In most of the cases, so we can see at the example, so this is the report of the United States after the US election. So we see millions of people reviewed fake news, the headlines. So we had thousands of people engaged in these posts. We have numerous bots, so to say, artificial commenters commenting the news. And so how do we measure the impact of these news on the results of the election? So this is one of the pressing questions that we have to answer. And so far research that has not suggested any precise answer how do we do that. So we have continuous research now done on so-called illusory truth effect, which simply means that if you have fake news, even if you are an educated person and you are a literate person, you are most likely not to believe then the truth, the real truth, which is verified afterwards, and you will be likely to believe these fake headlines. So, and this is the which all the pieces. This is the truth again, which all the pieces of research, the recent one, has confirmed. Sometimes we have damages which can be very easily measurable. Now, how? For instance, we have the news in Germany that migrants, so migrants is another topic which is very much influenced by those who make fake news. So we have the information that is spread that some illegal migrants, of course all the migrants in Germany are illegal, so this is another headline, no? So illegal migrants, they stabbed a German. So it resulted in what? And it resulted in the riot against the institutions in one of the cities of Germany. So we had 5,000 far-right protesters protesting against this kind of tolerance of the government towards migrants, because migrants are presented as those who do harm to the society, so who kill people. So the government has to deploy around 600 of policemen, and then 9 protesters and 9 people who went against this riot, they were injured. So here we have a very clear measurable damage done. No, since we have people injured, since we have the operation expenses for the operation that was launched, so we can measure the damage. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand what kind of impact there may be. I can give you another example of that in Lithuania. And that, you know, even gives more light to how influenced we can be and how the political influence was made. When we entered the European Union, which was in 2004, there was a condition that we have, if we want to enter the European Union, we have to close our power plant, so that produced the electricity. Why? Because it was not deemed to be safe, since it used a Soviet reactor. That was also used in Chernobyl, the catastrophe that you most probably are aware of. So, yes, of course, we understood the need to close the power plant, but then the countries, in particular Baltic countries, have been very much dependent on the energy from Russia. So this is why energy was one of the most important questions to us. So we had a referendum to whether we want to have a new power plant. Unfortunately, the referendum was held just after the Fukushima events. So the tsunami that was in place in Japan and in other countries as well, but and there were power plants that, you know, went broken. So what was the result of the referendum? So you may guess. We said no, we don't want to have a power plant in our country, because, I mean, we don't want to have accidents similar to that. Then we had one project, and we analyzed the whole media sets for surrounding this event. 80% of the comments coming against having the power plant came from the servers, from the accounts in Russia. And then we had only a couple of percentage for the votes in the end against power plant. So, and then, you know what happened next. You cannot change the voting results of referendum. But in 2 years, we had a new power plant being built in 50 kilometers from the Lithuanian border, from the capital in Belarus. So, and Belarus is known as the alliance of Russia. So then you may guess whether there was influence or not, and whether there was a prior plan to, before we even get to know the result. So what can we do about that? So that's the most acute question, and we are debating at various tables and various forums. What do we do with the fake news? How do we fight? Do we need to fight them in general? So the first key and the first answer is education. So we talk about critical thinking, no? Critical thinking of people. So of course, if we do not have literacy of people, that's so difficult to ask for critical thinking, because it requires some knowledge, some understanding of what's going on around. But understanding who is sending the news, what is the article about, when it was released, where it was released and why it was done, might give a better look at what is the message sent to the society. Informing. When it happens, it's very important to send a message and say that was it right or was it wrong. So European Union in 2015 launched so-called East Task. So the East Task, so Strategic Communication Task Force, is working on the Kremlin's news. So they have a specific website. You can go and visit, and you will see a lot of examples which are deconstructed, so it's called EU versus Disinfo. So far they had, since 2015, they analyzed 6,500 cases launched against different countries in the world in different languages. You see 20 plus languages. So, and they even provide the disinfo, or as they say, the disinformation news for the week, for the day. They have the data set. So if you want to go and look how it really looks like, and if you have any doubts about some news that were released worldwide, so you can go and visit and you will see all the references to the relevant source in terms of deconstruction of the news. Blocking. So blocking is the first measure that was attempted. So when we had the scandal in various jurisdictions in various states, so the first thing that came to the mind, okay, so if it goes through Facebook, Twitter, and other media, so they should be responsible for that first, no? So they have to check the information which is published. So, and it resulted, after the negotiations, after the deliberations, it resulted in blocking numerous accounts, hundreds of accounts. But sometimes we have the issue with the televisions, also the online newspapers, that they really trust in one way or another the source, and they republish the information which is misleading or which is considered to be disinformation, unknowingly that this information is not correct. Or sometimes it looks so true that, or sometimes it's not possible even to verify this was. But maybe I think we will be able to have the discussion on that. I mean, how media looks at that, because from the perspective of the security, I mean, everything is more simple. So we have to take measures in order to prevent, and maybe we have to take legal measures. And it's on purpose that I put illegal, so which is like usually ILL. So, and we are talking basically about what's happening in in cyberspace. And so we have, how does it work basically? So we have sometimes bots, sometimes real people. So we call them factories. So the example of the factory is one of the research agency in Russia. So, and you can hear, so the Trolls factory, so they have, at the moment they have around, during the US election, they had a huge house of 12,000 square meters, 80 employees who daily released thousands and hundreds of different messages, and they have been working specifically on US election things. So, so you see the numbers here. So they have created numerous, like millions of tweets and millions, and also they had 3 million, almost 4,000 of Twitter accounts, etc. So the impact is enormous, and the investment reaches millions of dollars. So, well, it's clear that the state, some states, they have interest in doing so. So another research released by UK Parliament, and this is the research shows how different Russian medias worked on, or accounts or organizations went on Brexit. So European Union for Europeans is in a way the guarantee of safety. I mean, the guarantee of freedom, the guarantee of fundamental rights, and European Union was predominantly created and believed to be the guarantee against the war. So we believe truly that economic ties between the countries, as well the understanding of common European values, may prevent from the war. The easiest thing to think that it's not true is to say, oh look, nations do not believe in that. Nations started leaving European Union. So this is why for us Brexit question was so important. So Brexit, I'm talking about Britain, Great Britain leaving the European Union, and they had the referendum on that. And Great Britain, they said that they wanted to leave the European Union, basically for security reasons. If you talk to people in there, they did not want. They wanted to control migration issue, and they could not because we have the United European Union policy on that. So how to regulate that? So this is an acute question. We discuss it in various occasions as well with the lawyers. And the first idea, and this is what I'm really, as a human rights lawyer, I'm very satisfied about this approach. Freedom of speech comes first. So we understand that everybody needs to have the freedom of speech. In particular, before election, we have to have a healthy debate on, so even on their health or their beliefs or whatever they, is in their political profile. So for us, taking criminal responsibility is never an option. Just an example, for instance, in the Lithuanian constitution, we say disinformation is a crime, but we never put it in the criminal code. Because we never had, when we were occupied as a country, we didn't have the freedom of speech. So understanding how disinformation might be harmful, even in this case, we did not resort to putting disinformation to the criminal code. For us, it's administrative responsibility. But if you have a look at the landscape, this is not readable, but this is not even the intention. So after US elections and UK Brexit referendum, so various countries in the world took different measures on fighting disinformation. And they vary from jail to fine, from simply deploying task forces and educating people to blocking of some of the media outlets. But this is a huge discussion still, because we value, as I mentioned, the right to information and freedom of speech. And this leads me to the end. So thank you very much for your attention.